I'm Aryeh Schwartz, along with my co-host, Rachel Galligan, and welcome to the Winsidr Show, where it's all about the W. We're recapping the recent events of the WNBA. Two teams with only one loss so far in the league, and the Wings, the Dallas Wings, have not won yet. We're talking about the WNBA and all that has gone on. If you like our show, please consider joining our Patreon community. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. Rachel, it has been a wild week. It's been a little bit under a week since our last episode, but it feels like a week because they've really compiled a lot of great games into a short amount of time, even though this season's spread out, unlike last year. We're gonna trail back, if that's okay with you, Rachel. Is that okay with you? We're gonna trail back to a few games that happened since our last episode, since we talked about the most dominating players in the league early in the season. And a few of the games that pop out is definitely Minnesota and Phoenix. That was an epic battle last week, and it 58-56 final. Minnesota Lynx pull off the win. I think a lot of the naysayers when it comes to Minnesota before that game were saying, oh, the Minnesota hasn't played a hard team yet. Look what's gone on. They lost to the Storm. They beat the Storm. They went back and forth. You know, let's see what happens when they take on a team that's predicted to be a favorite. And well, Rachel, Napheesa Collier comes up big. There was times where she was very, very dominating on defense against DeWanna Bonner and other top offensive players in this league. And I got to say, I was blown away with her defensive ability.
Yes, I agree. That was a game. I mean, I think she only had like 4 points in that game. But an efficient and timely 4 points. But you're so right with her. She really showcased her ability to be so versatile from a matchup standpoint with her size and her strength and her athleticism. I mean, she can do so many things on the floor outside of just scoring. You know, I mean, she's just such a pro-ready, you know, her body is so unique. It's so hard to find. I'm still blown away that she went as late as she did in the draft. I'll probably keep saying it all season, so just bear with me, everybody. But you're right. She was tremendous on the defensive end of the floor. And I think Minnesota, you know, I mean, the Mercury gave them all they could handle, especially down the stretch. I mean, DeWanna Bonner literally threw the entire team on her back and was trying to will them, you know, down the stretch to that win. They cut it late in the game, but you know, Bonner finishes with 25 points. She's the only player on that Mercury roster that scored in double figures. And I mean, not to take your point away from Napheesa Collier, but I'm looking at the stats and I'm thinking back to that game, and it's so ridiculous that Brittany Griner was shut down in the way that she was. I mean, she gets 3 shot attempts in about 33 minutes of play. And can we just talk a little bit to that Griner Fowles matchup and how dominant Fowles has been historically over Griner?
Well, first of all, I do want to say Bonner went in streaks. So Collier was more like poignant on specific parts of the game, like that great block to win to seal the victory. But yes, this is something that I have been, and a lot of people give me crap for. I've been focusing in, you know, the early battles between Minnesota, and Minnesota first brought Sil in and in that trade from Chicago, and it really reshaped the Minnesota Phoenix dynamic. Brittany Griner and Sylvia Fowles have been going at it Brittany Griner's whole career in the W. And I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I got into this argument, a long, hefty debate last year. It's somewhere around like 30 games, maybe 40 games that they faced up against each other. And if you look at the stats, arguably there's like 5 of them that Brittany Griner got the win. Between the two, I'm not talking about did the team win, did the team lose. I'm talking about that head-to-head matchup. Who got the upper hand? And Rachel, as you said before we got on air, I think it's safe to say Sil's got Brittany's number.
Right. I mean, and for the Mercury, like Bonner can't do it all. You know, like someone else has got to step up, or else this is going to continue to happen. I mean, we're used to Bonner trying to throw the team on her back and kind of will them to wins and stuff, but you can't have Brianne January finishing 1 for 7. Other players coming in and shooting as poorly as they did, which I don't anticipate is going to happen very often, especially when you get Taurasi back. But the biggest one for me is Brittany Griner. If Griner steps up and has, a double, or a more normal, if you will, Griner type of game, they're able to pull that win out. So it can't all fall on Bonner's shoulders. You're asking too much. Now, she's a tremendous player. If you had to say who's the MVP of the league right now, she has to be probably up in that discussion. I know she's mine, at least right now. But no, I mean, it was just shocking to me that Griner gets 3 shot attempts and finishes with 4 points. I mean, just a complete non-factor. And honestly, like, unacceptable in my opinion. There's no excuse for that. I think it's a little bit ridiculous that you just allow yourself to get worked in that degree. And I know I'm being harsh, but like, come on, man, like this is what we're talking about. But props to Minnesota, the balanced scoring that they had that game, and thoughts out to Jessica Shepard, who, with the injury we just found out about this week. I mean, she was really a really great catalyst for this Lynx team, a great addition to them. And, these injuries just keep piling up, but Minnesota, I'm impressed with just overall, as you said, kind of when we first got into this conversation, this being kind of a staple win, if you will, an early win that kind of proved that they were for real.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people were definitely questioning that. And let's flip it, because this is all lead up to the epic rivalry of the Minnesota Lynx LA Sparks. And on the flip side, the Sparks, on that same day that Minnesota beats Phoenix, is in Connecticut, loses to Connecticut in a rematch of Connecticut was recently in LA and got their first loss of the season. At the time, Sparks 2-2, going up against Connecticut, and a rough loss. They lose 77-89. Some great play by the Gumake sisters, but they're not able to get it out. Also, Marina Mabry, Mabry, sorry. Mabry, sorry. I get names wrong. 14 points in 28 minutes. Just a really impressive outing for the young guard. For me, though, it was interesting to see the two different paths that the Lynx and the Sparks have been on this season and this off season. One team loses a bunch of their stars. The other team and like completely rebuilds their roster. Completely. This other team loses their head coach and does some tinkering with the roster, but it's not like a completely different roster. And we go in to the latest chapter in the saga of this battle, and we have a final score of 89-85. But that 4 points doesn't even tell you how close it was. Obviously, Lindsay Whalen's number goes up into the rafters, much respect away, greatest Minnesota athlete of all time. But let's run through a little bit of this Minnesota-LA game, because at the end of one, it's tied. At the half, it's a 5-point game. At the end of 3, Minnesota ekes. I mean, this was the most classic Lynx Sparks battle. And maybe I was being naive to think that with all the changes that have happened, that maybe this wouldn't continue. But Rachel, it's still some of the most entertaining basketball in the W.
Right. Yeah, I feel you a little bit on that, like the rivalry thing. It kind of feels like it's not there anymore, which I don't even know. I haven't thought about that yet. So I kind of agree with you on that point. But I mean, it was a really, really good game. And if you look at the numbers, as I put my coaching hat on, like I just typically do, it was really evenly matched. Both teams shot right at the same percentage. Both teams shot from 2 and 3. The one, honestly, the Lynx in certain areas of the stat sheet, they beat the Sparks. They got to the free throw line more. They were more efficient in terms of just the attempts that they got. Now, when LA got to the free throw line, they shot, I think so far a season high 94%, which is really, really good for them. They just, the Lynx got there like 9 more times than they did. The rebounding battle. I mean, Minnesota was dominant on the glass, which like that's a number for me, like when you're dominating on the glass like that, more times than not, the game's going to end in your favor. So I think it's an interesting game because if you don't look at the score and you look at the stat sheets, you realize, man, like Minnesota should have won this game. But I think one of the biggest areas was the turnovers. Those.
Yeah. How do you, Rachel, how do you win when you have over 20
Right.
turnovers?
And just those 5 extra turnovers that Minnesota had in a game like this leads to, those are 5 extra possessions that LA was able to capitalize on. And so I think, in such a game that's so close and it's going to come down to just specific possessions, especially down the stretch, that's kind of what it came down to in this one specifically. But both teams, balanced scoring, exciting. This is going to be a matchup as we have gotten used to in years. And I think that more than anything, that was a reminder to me of like, okay, this is going to continue to be epic battles down the stretch, even though we have seen drastic changes on both sides.
And I'm excited about that.
Me too.
I'm extremely excited for the next time they play to hopefully see Elena Beard back, Candace Parker back. Hopefully Alexis Jones gets to see some playing time. Hopefully Simone Augustus is back. Karima Christmas Kelly's back. There's a lot of stuff that we were still missing stars from this, and this was still, I haven't had that adrenaline, that heart race since the finals, or not even the finals, since the semifinals last year. So it was definitely really exciting to watch, and I'm happy that both these teams are showing, hey, we're still around. Don't forget about us. Because something really interesting, if you look at the standings currently, I know conferences really don't matter right now, but if you look at the Western Conference standing, you got Lynx at 4-2, Sparks at 3-2, Storm at 3-3, and Mercury at 2-2, and Aces 2-3, and Wings 0-4. But it's funny because this is kind of a throwback, if you will, to what we've seen when we had the powerhouses of the Lynx and the Sparks at the top dogs, just in the Western Conference stats. But let's move on to a team that, yeah.
I'm going to call a new rivalry because I'm kind of already getting that vibe. And I don't know if it's because of the drama, but the Connecticut Sun and the Sparks. Do you get that sense?
Yes.
Of a new rivalry being built?
Yeah, only because all right, yeah, there's this and that, look, let me lay it out very matter of fact.
Lay it out. Go ahead.
All right. I think we're naive to think that it was a happy split between the Sun and Shanae. And so let's keep that on our mind. Now you put Shanae on a team with her sisters and her sister players, and that team's definitely gonna surround her and say, hey, this is our girl, we got her back, we're on her side of this argument. Like when a couple splits up and you got to take sides. And then both teams are gonna use that as kindle to the fire to get this thing going. And considering how physical those two matchups were and the jabbing that was going on, I'm with you. This maybe, is it me or the Sparks just getting themselves involved in all these rivalries? It's like the Mercury a few years ago.
Possibly. I mean, I like the Sun Sparks matchup. You're talking about two completely opposite ends of the country. You're talking about two teams that, as of right now, we're talking at least in the top 4. I think there's an argument to be made where for each of them where they are contenders. Kurt Miller used to coach a lot of these players on LA. I don't know. I like a lot of the storylines that surround these two teams, and I'm curious, especially this early in the season, both teams split. Both games really were, I guess, what's the right word? Really intense, I guess, if you will. Like it got chippy, all that sort of stuff. So that's just my prediction, not to take us too far off course.
No, and I'm with you. And hey, you better circle that next game on the calendar and make sure you go check that out because it's going to be a fun one. But now we do need to move on because there's some other cool stuff that's happened, Rachel. Liberty pull off a win, and on the other side of that, the Aces are now 1-3 with Liz Cambage.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the Liberty first. What did you see from this team? That told you they were ready to win?
I was so ready to watch this game for like a quarter and a half and turn the channel, and it didn't happen. I'm watching this team, and honestly, and then I step back and I'm like, why are you like in your mind writing them off? And I hadn't. That's not what I'm saying here. I think the Liberty, this is a team that, I mean, goodness, their last win prior to beating the Aces was July 15th of 2018. So we're going on like 11 months here where, I mean, since this team's even had a win. And they have been in some games. I think it's 3 out of their 5 games they lost within single digits. So you could kind of see that this was a team that as soon as they got a little bit of momentum, as soon as they had some other players other than Tina Charles step up and make some shots, they could come in and win a game. And you kind of got the sense that was going to happen sooner rather than later when you really stopped and looked at how this team was trending. And I don't know, to not be too harsh, but Aces jumped out pretty quickly, and I don't know if this is a young Aces team that, as Bill Lambier continues to say, we have to learn to win. You can't even call us a favorite. I mean, yeah, that's nice, but we still have to win. We still have to learn to win games. I think it was probably easy for them to want to overlook the Liberty a little bit. A young team coming into a city, it's got a lot of distractions, if you will, and you probably have a heightened sense of who you are, even though you're not exactly dominating the league right now, and you still have a lot of things you're trying to figure out. But I don't know how much it was truly the Aces overlooking the Liberty, because I feel like if I'm a player in the WNBA, you have to understand that, like, you can't overlook anyone in this league. I mean, I feel like that's probably generally known, but let's be honest, if there was a team to overlook, it's going to be the Liberty. But after those first few minutes, Liberty, I mean, they got some momentum, they got going offensively. And then the thing that really stood out to me was the hustle play and the heart. And they just came out and wanted it so much more than what the Aces did. And they punked them. They flat out like punched them in the face and just whooped their tails in so many areas of just the hustle and heart plays. And those are the plays that make all the difference. Those are the plays that get you extra possession. Those are the plays that, they just, you could just tell their demeanor on the court. New York was going to refuse to lose that game. And obviously a huge part of it is the balanced scoring, which we haven't seen. So much has lied on Tina Charles's shoulders. And so to be able to have a player like Bria Hartley and Kia Nurse step up, and I mean, Brittany Boyd was huge in that game, especially late in the first half, stepped up big with some big time shots. Basically, what the Aces did defensively, they basically dared someone else to beat them other than Charles, which is at this point a really smart game plan.
And kind of the game plan that everyone does.
I mean, and they were leaving Boyd wide open, daring her to take shots, and she stepped up. To her credit, she hit some really nice shots early in the game. Bria Hartley, they need her to do that more. They need Kia Nurse to do that more. Zowie B's got to contribute. So offensively, they had players that really contributed, and it all came down to momentum. They had the crowd into it. They were just dominant on the glass. They did a great job with that, and honestly, they did a great job taking care of the basketball, which is a big.
All right, I want to ask you this because there's 2 things I want to ask you. One, first I want to point out a little stat, and then I want to ask you. One, if you look at the 3-point attempts, I know that I'm sounding like a broken record, and you're sick and tired of me talking about 3-ball, but
you are loving the 3-ball lately.
For me, it's just like, okay, when you have, look at this, you have one team shot 26. And one team shot 13. Now, honestly, I expected going into this game that they're going to shoot quite similar amounts. They score similar amounts. Kia Nurse goes 3 for 8 from the 3-point line and has half of New York's 3 balls. But if you take away, those 26 shots, I just think it extends the court a little bit more and frees up other players. Sure. And probably gives Tina a better position. But the question I want to ask you, as a player, I don't know if you've ever been in this situation, but talk to me the mindset of a player who goes into a game versus your ex-coach, and your ex-coach essentially says, I am daring you to beat me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess there's 2 ways to look at it. Either you say, all right, challenge accepted, like, this is why you shouldn't have left us. Or, like, me being, like, the classic hate on myself type person, I'm like, that would get in my head more than any smack talk that any player can do.
I think it depends on the player, and that's what, especially with someone, some of these players on this Liberty team that did rise to the occasion. I think that shows a lot about their mental standpoint, their competitiveness. I mean, I know for me, like if my former coach is going to dare me to basically not guard me, yeah, it's a slap in the face. You know, and you're going to get pissed and you're going to elevate your game and you're going to do something about it. I mean, that's how I would want to respond. That's how the Liberty, I think, across the board responded, but you can't fault Lambier for the game plan. It made sense. And I mean, Asia Wilson can't go 2 for 10. She had another rough shooting night. If she does more Asia Wilson normal things, we could potentially have a completely different outcome here. Liz Cambage goes 5 for 14, still 17 points, but I mean, that's a lot of empty shots right there between those two players. Finishing 7 for around 24, making me do my math right now. But so, I think, back to your point of responding, the Liberty wanted that one. I think they wanted it for Katie Smith. They wanted it for themselves. They had a chip on their shoulder in that game. And they came out and just punked them. They did. They just rose to the occasion.
Interesting fact, Asia Wilson's 5 points in that game was the first time in her young pro career that she did not score double digits. And she was up to like 30 or 35 or 36 games or something like that. Mm-hmm. And it was funny because you look at who held the other record, and I want to say it was Candace Parker, but it was like 95 for consecutive games. Wow. With 10 points or more to start your WNBA career. Wow. It was like it was in the 90s. I was shocked. That's impressive. Oh no, sorry, it was Cynthia Cooper. Shocked. Let's talk about Atlanta real quick. They have just struggled defensively. I know, talking to head coach Nikki about a week ago when she was in DC, a lot of it had to do, and she took a lot of blame for it. She said, look, when I came into my first year, it was very much so about implementing a system, learning the system from the ground up. Because it's my second year, maybe we went into this a little bit more. We've already learned the system. Let's start at level 2 and move our way up. And not having that great base has been an issue. If you ask me, a lot of it also has to do with the fact that, it's a new wave when a new coach comes in with a high intensity, a high energy, athletic roster. And now you're kind of seeing the sophomore slump. You see it in players, you see it in coaches, and you see it in systems. And it's going to happen. Rachel, do you want to add anything about Atlanta before we move on to your hometown?
No, I think you're right on those fronts. I mean, it's everyone's like, really, what's going on in Atlanta? What's going on in Atlanta? I mean, are we really that naive to think that this isn't possible right now? The fact that what Nikki Collin and this team was able to do last year, nobody could have necessarily predicted. They hit a stride, they hit a wave, they rolled it into the playoffs. They had a tremendous season. I don't want to say it was easy by any stretch, but we all can agree that they had a lot of momentum and they were clicking on all cylinders for the majority of the season. So, this is still a new team. This is still a new system. Sophomore slump, if you will, trying to kind of, I don't know, is the expectation we're just going to come in and automatically be good because that's what we did last year. And it was, in some ways kind of easy. And I think right now you're seeing some of those struggles. And honestly, like with as early as it is, I mean, it's not too alarming to me in some ways, because I think you have to, at some point, expect this, that they're going to have to go through some struggles. They're going to have to kind of re-identify some things. They're going to have to work on some locker room type of struggles, maybe some chemistry things. Those things will get worked out, by Nikki Collin, her staff, all those things. And at the end of the day, you want your team to be peaking at the right time. And whether that is, really early in the season, like we saw with Connecticut last year, or in middle of the season, or, come playoff time. You hope for Atlanta that they can get things figured out come middle of the season, towards the end of playoff time, and get on a roll. And it's so early enough that they have time to do that.
Talk to me about the Seattle Storm Chicago Sky matchup, because the Sky's 2 wins so far this season come at the hand of the defending champions, 83-79 and then 78-71. I mean, what is this Chicago Sky team? I think this is going to sound ridiculous. They are who we thought they are. When their offense was rolling, at one point, the Sky in the first half were shooting upwards of 65%.
Mm-hmm. I think it's 67% or something.
Yeah, like that's just insane. Now, obviously, they came back to earth and ended up shooting a measly 42. But still, I mean, seriously, this team, when they're rolling on offense and making the shots, I hear what we've heard from James Wade of this offense, we can really create once we get out in transition, this and that. And I see it finally in spurts. But then the critic in me is like, yeah, but what's going on with this defense?
Right. I mean, I think that the story of this game was that hot start. When you come out of the gate with that much momentum, and you're at home and shots are falling and it's easy to ride that wave, and then, had there been another quarter, had we played 5 quarters, Seattle would have won that game. Seattle came back, they outscored them in the 4th, they outscored them in the 3rd. But luckily Chicago had such a big start. Actually, they
outscored them everything but the first.
They did. They outscored them in every quarter. So it truly did come down to that first quarter for Chicago. And it was that dominant and that ridiculous from a percentage standpoint. But like I said, Seattle was on their way to come back and take that thing. But I think with Chicago, I don't know. I still don't know. I'm dumbfounded still a little bit, and that's a harsh word, but I'm just still trying to figure out what is this team? Who's the X factor on this team? Sometimes I think it's Stephanie Dolson when she's making shots and contributing. They're going to be a team that's really tough to beat. I mean, Dolson goes 7 for 8. When was the last time we saw her shoot that well? It's been a while. I'm still very alarmed by the turnovers. 20 turnovers in that game. That's still so high. And if you don't shoot the ball as well as you did that first quarter, you don't win that game with numbers like that. So I mean, defensively, they gave up 71 points. That's not terrible. So I don't know. Speaking to the defensive numbers in that, they out rebounded them. They were dominant on the glass. Cheyenne Parker played tremendous, and she continues to just get better and better. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's a broken record with Chicago. We see what they're capable of doing in spurts. We see the talent they have with Diamond DeShields, and I like Lavender on this team. We all know what Allie Quigley and Vandersloot can do. Cheyenne Parker has really demanded to be a respected presence on this team. I just want to know, can this team be consistent from a scoring standpoint, and can this team ever take care of the basketball? Those are the questions I have, probably a little bit more than defensively. I mean, defensively, they're not going to be one of the top defensive teams in the league. They're just not, just based on personnel. So what can you do to rein that in and help your chances by limiting points? Well, you rebound the hell out of the basketball, and then that's what they have been doing. But I just want to know kind of offensively what's going on here, and can we see any form of consistency from a turnover standpoint?
That's going to be the question all season long, Rachel. On the flip side, the Storm, for me, we're not going to get deep into it. That's a whole nother episode with so much going on with them. For me, a lot of it has to do with the trickle-down effect of not having Sue Bird or Brianna Stewart, where the spacing. Howard isn't getting good looks from 3. Howard isn't able to stretch the floor as much as she was when you have that addition of Brianna Stewart, and, the obvious addition of Sue Bird never hurts that either. So there's a lot there. We're going to talk about that in an episode where we kind of dive into the Storm a little bit more in depth. The thing I do want to talk about right now, and at the top of the episode, spoke about this. 2 teams with only 1 loss, and they're facing off tonight. The Sun and the Mystics both only have 1 loss. And the real question for me when it comes to the Mystics, I've been at all their home games. This team is rolling. They are in mid-season form. They were chomping at the bit to get this season started because they are ready for it. They feel that, with a few changes, they could have won the championship last year. Do I agree with that 100%? No. But that's how I view it. My biggest question mark with the Mystics so far this season is what happens when they take on a legitimate team. And so far, in my opinion, the only team that they've really taken on was Connecticut in their first game, and they lost. Granted, Deladon did not play. Connecticut, seen some up and downs. Rachel, looking at this game, what do you think are going to be some key factors for who can pull off the win?
Well, I mean, you throw in the Deladon factor. It's not even a factor. That's just a complete game changer. But I think the big question mark for me, when Connecticut is rolling offensively, which they've been doing for so far this year, not to jinx anybody, knock on wood. Sorry, Kurt Miller and staff. But they've been scoring from a lot of different places. Courtney Williams, JJ, Jasmine Thomas, the Thomases, Strickland, had some games where she's hit down a lot, knocked down a lot of shots. I'm curious, the Mystics' ability to guard Connecticut, to get stops, because I think Connecticut will defend, Connecticut will rebound. They're going to be disciplined both sides of the basketball, more times than not. I'm just curious, from the Mystics on a defensive standpoint. Now, the Mystics have some of the most offensive firepower in the league. So if they come out, and they're hot and they're making shots early, they could ride that wave, living and dying by the three ball, living and dying with quick shots in the possession. So I think for me, in the Mystics, it comes down to their ability to make shots early, and their ability to defend Connecticut in all the different actions that they're running and personnel that they have. It's an interesting matchup. Like you said, Connecticut routed Washington the first time they played, 84-69. So, but I do think it's a completely different game when you throw Deladon in there. So it's going to be a good one. No doubt about that. Top two teams.
Top two teams in the league top two teams in the league. It's going to be interesting on many levels. Atkins been a little bit of a slump for her last two games. How does she step up? How does she, kick it into gear for this one? Because this is a top matchup. Also, Natasha Cloud. I've said this last year. I'll say it again this year a billion times. This team's runs off Natasha Cloud's energy. They need her to be in top form. We saw her have a career game in New York a few days ago. She bounces back, has another great game against Dallas the other night. Let's see what she can do tonight going up against, we could very well be seeing a preview of the finals, the semifinals right now, folks. So definitely pay attention. We got a team on a 3-game win streak and a team on a 4-game win streak. And the last thing I'll say about this is keep in mind last year, I don't know if you remember, they had 2 games where, some of the most exciting high-scoring games the W has ever seen. We got close to having, the scoring records broken in those games. So I'm excited. This is going to be a high-power, high-offense game. And I guess we're at that point, Rachel. It's time for Pick'em.
Let's pick them.
Pick them. So we got 3 games tonight. We'll start off with a little bit easier one. Storm at Fever.
You say easy, but I have been trying to pick some upsets. I picked the wrong one last time. But at the end of the day, the Fever, from what I saw the last game, reverted back to some old Fever ways. So I'm not feeling incredibly high on them, at least in this exact moment. So I'm going to go Storm.
Ooh, going Storm. I'm glad you do, because I'm going Fever. Next game, the Mercury at the Sky.
I'm going to go Mercury.
Yeah, no, I'm going Mercury also. I was really just delaying this last one because it's a coin flip for me. Rachel, I'll let you go first. Mystics at the Sun.
I'm going Sun.
All right, you're going Sun. I want to go Sun. I'm going Sun, but hear me out.
You want to go against your own hometown team?
This is why. And look, people can hate on me all you want because I got screwed by this on the whole Lynx Mercury thing. For me, it's more so of who you've played so far versus how good you've been playing. So for me, it's like, look who the Mystics have played. Atlanta, Chicago, New York, and Dallas. Okay, you got wins off that, but those are all games that you should have won. And then you got blown out by Connecticut. The Connecticut at least has played Vegas, LA. They've had some trials and tribulations. I'm going Sun, but not easy to say.
I'm going Sun because they are the most consistent and dominant is a strong word because I don't think they're being dominant, but they are the most solid on both ends of the ball so far this season.
I agree with you. We at Winsidr believe in the players of the W and its community deserve the same in-depth analysis and respect that men's sports receive on a daily basis. Please consider joining our Patreon community to help support us and the hard work we do. This has been the Winsidr Show.